We all know that JRPGs are known for their length. These are games we tend to associate with these big, sprawling worlds, 50 plus hour stories, and that nagging question of, am I really going to finish this game before another massive one comes out? And for a lot of us, that scale is part of the appeal. These games become memorable stretches of our lives, but sometimes you just want the magic of a JRPG without the commitment of a full-on 100-hour experience. You want to fall in love with a cast of characters, you want to see the world through to its conclusion, and still have room for other things. That's where today's list comes in. We're looking at 10 JRPGs you can finish in 30 hours or less. These are games that respect your time while still offering the heart, charm, and emotion that we all love from the genre. So whether you're a busy adult with a huge backlog or just craving a more compact experience, these games deliver that sweet spot of short but super satisfying, so let's not waste any more time, let's dive right into it. The Suikoden series has always been this fascinating counterpoint to the bigger names in JRPGs, where Final Fantasy leans into spectacle and Dragon Quest thrives on tradition. Suikoden tells stories about politics, betrayal, and honestly the messy human side of conflict. The first two games released on the PlayStation back in the mid-90s and remain fan favorites not just because they were ahead of their time, but because they managed to be lean, impactful adventures. That's why the HD remasters feel so exciting. It modernizes two classics, cleaning up the pixel art, remastering the sound, and smoothing over decades-old rough edges. It does all this while keeping what made them so accessible in the first place. You can play through each of these stories in about 20 to 25 hours, making them perfect for anyone who wants to knock out a meaningful JRPG journey without a massive time sink. At their core, both games are about rebellion. The first follows a young hero caught up in a fight against a corrupt empire, while the second expands the scale into a sprawling war between two nations. The trick is that you're never just saving the world, you're gathering allies, building an army, and leading a resistance. Then there's the famous 108 Stars of Destiny system. Think of it as a JRPG twist on Pokemon. You can recruit over 100 characters, each with their own quirks, abilities, or even minigames. Some join through story beats, some through exploration, and some through funny little side quests. It's not mandatory to find them all, but every recruit makes the rebellion feel bigger and more alive. And unlike other games where collect them all becomes tedious, Suikoden manages to make recruitment quick and organic. Combat is straightforward turn-based fare, but with enough quirks to keep things interesting. In the remaster, you have the auto battle feature that speeds up the grind, and it's something I used quite a bit. You've got normal battles, one-on-one duels, and even large-scale army clashes. None of them overstay their welcome, which fits perfectly with the game's brisk runtime. The remasters don't reinvent the wheel, but they do make these classics far easier to recommend. Faster load times, sharper presentation, and some amazing quality of life tweaks. For me, these are the kind of games you can knock out in a week or so and come away feeling like you accomplished something significant. The Atelier series has carved out a pretty distinct corner of the JRPG world. Atelier has always been about the smaller moments: alchemy, friendship, the joy of exploration. With Atelier Yumiya, Gus took that formula and blew it wide open, creating their first true open world entry. It's ambitious, it's experimental, and most importantly for this list, it's structured in a way that you can still enjoy it as a shorter JRPG if you really aim to do so, provided that you focus on the story and don't get too lost in the weeds. Clocking in at around 25 to 30 hours for the main story, Yumiya pushes the upper boundary of what we're calling short here, but the pacing is surprisingly digestible. If you avoid all the side distractions, you can reasonably wrap it up in under the 25-hour mark. And what you get in that time is dense with ideas and charm and creativity. The thing I like most is that it can be as short or as long as you'd like it to be. Exploration is one of the game's biggest highlights. Gus' take on an open world doesn't feel bloated in the way so many other games do. Instead of endless checklists, Yumiya sprinkles meaningful landmarks, puzzles, and gathering nodes throughout the landscape. Every detour feels like it matters, so even when you're just wandering around, you don't feel like you're wasting any time. The alchemy system is still the series' heart, and in Yumiya, it feels better than ever. Crafting has always been about more than just making items. It's a puzzle box where different ingredients lead to new outcomes. Here it's streamlined without being dumbed down. You can tinker and optimize if you want. but you can also craft exactly what you need and keep moving. That flexibility makes it ideal for those who don't want to sink endless hours into a crafting system. Combat is a bit of a departure. Rather than traditional turn-based battles, Yumiya goes for an action RPG hybrid. You're dodging, parrying, and weaving cooldown-based skills in real time, swapping characters mid-fight to chain combos and exploit weaknesses. Some critics felt like it bordered on button mashy, but I think that accessibility works in its favor. The story leans a little bit darker than some past Atelier entries. Alchemy in this world is controversial, tied to disasters in the past, and Yumiya herself carries the burden of unraveling those legacies. It's a more somber narrative than usual, but it balances that weight with moments of warmth and humor that keep it from becoming bleak. For me, Atelier Yumiya is proof that JRPGs can evolve while still offering a tight, respectful runtime. Few JRPGs embody the idea of short but satisfying better than Live Alive. Originally released in 1994 on the Super Famicom and finally remade worldwide in 2022 with that beautiful HD 2D art style, it's a game built around the concept of compact storytelling. Instead of one long epic, you get 7 bite-sized adventures, each playable within a few hours. Put together, they form a complete picture, but even individually, each chapter feels like its own short JRPG. That's the magic here. You can sit down and finish an entire scenario in one evening. Maybe you'll pick the prehistoric chapter, or the far future segment, which leans more toward a tense sci-fi thriller than a traditional RPG. And then there's my favorite, the Wild West. This one's a blast to play. I still go back to it consistently, and it's a ton of fun every single time I experience it. Each story experiments with different mechanics, tone, and pacing, and none of them drag on for too long. What ties them together is variety. One chapter might have almost no combat at all, relying instead on exploration and story beats, while another is packed with boss fights and leveling. The ninja chapter can take you an hour or several hours depending on how you approach it. That flexibility makes Live Alive super amazing, and you always feel like you're making progress, and you can pick and choose based on how much time you have to play. The combat system, when it shows up, is a unique twist on turn-based strategy. It plays out on a grid with positioning and abilities tied to movement. It's not as deep as something like Final Fantasy Tactics, obviously, but it's fast and flexible, letting each scenario put its own spin on the system. And then, once you finish the initial 7 stories, Live Alive hits you with its final chapter where everything converges and comes together. Suddenly, those small-scale adventures feel like puzzle pieces to a larger-scale story. For those looking for short JRPG experiences, Live Alive is basically a collection of them all in one. Each chapter is a neat, self-contained journey, and together they add up to a full, memorable game. Expedition 33 floored me. It's one of the rare modern games that manages to feel complete without being overwhelming. My playthrough ran me a little over 25 hours or so, and in that span, I got a full emotional arc with characters I'll be thinking about for a long time, and the combat, that kept me engaged right up to the final stretch. The setup is immediately gripping. Every year, the figure known as the Paintress erases part of humanity, and Expedition 33 is another push to stop the cycle. It's a premise that sounds grand and mythic, but the game doesn't drown you in lore or politics. Instead, it focuses on a small group of people bound by inevitability and their reasons for marching toward what feels like just an absolutely doomed fight with no hope. That intimacy, though, is what makes it all work. You're not juggling 50 party members or sprawling nations or crazy skill trees. You're walking alongside these people that you really connect with, and they're stubborn and hopeful, and they just feel real and human. Combat deserves a very special mention here because it's not what you might expect. This feels like a very modern twist on turn-based JRPG combat. You're aiming shots, timing parries, weaving together abilities that can really topple some of the craziest, largest enemies you've ever seen. And the rhythm of it all makes everything just feel great. It's the kind of system where even a standard encounter demands your best attention. And then there's the presentation. This is a beautiful game with a great art style. It's got kind of that realistic feel to it, but it's definitely unique in its own right. And that paired with the soundtrack, man, the whole package is truly something special. What I love most about Expedition 33 is how it respects your time. It doesn't pad itself out. There's not a ton of backtracking. This is a really tight, well-told story, and one that really is something that I think everyone should experience. 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim is one of those games that seems impossible to describe on paper. It's a time-traveling, mech-piloting, crazy fighting visual novel / strategy hybrid? Yeah, it sounds crazy. You play through the perspectives of 13 different protagonists. It sounds like a recipe for chaos, but here's the thing. Despite how dense it all seems, 13 Sentinels is surprisingly approachable, and even more surprising, you can finish the whole thing in around 30 hours. This is because the game is structured the way it is. Instead of one linear story, you're kind of piecing together dozens of bite-sized episodes. Each character has their own timeline, their own mysteries, and their own emotional arcs, and you can even dip in and out at your own pace. You might spend 10 minutes seeing one, and then you might jump to the far future where some soldier is piloting a giant sentinel against an alien invasion. Piece by piece, all these puzzles come together. This structure makes it easy to play in short bursts without losing momentum. You can sit down, play 1 or 2 episodes, and feel like you've advanced the plot quite a bit. The combat side is more of a palate cleanser. You command squads of sentinels in tactical battles. The combat might not be as deep as a dedicated strategy RPG, kind of like, Unicorn Overlord, but it's flashy and satisfying, enough to break up the narrative. And crucially, the battles don't even take that long. Most can be finished in like 10 to 15 minutes. Where 13 Sentinels truly shines, though, is its writing. Vanillaware is known for amazing visuals, and they deliver here, but the storytelling is the real star. It's a game about adolescence, memory, and identity disguised as a giant robot apocalypse. And because it's short, every reveal lands that much harder. By the end, all 13 stories converge in a way that feels really, really satisfying. The Lunar series might not be as instantly recognizable as, say, Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest, but for those who played it back in the day, it holds a kind of mythic reputation. These games were originally released in the early 90s, and with the recent remasters, tons of new people are finally able to get their hands on them. They're polished up, easier to access, and still just as charming as they were decades ago. What makes Lunar such a strong fit on this list is its pacing. Silver Star Story in particular runs about 20 hours, and it never felt like it was padded or that it was overstaying its welcome. The story is pretty straightforward. It's the kind of classic JRPG setup that could feel a little cliche now, but there's a sincerity to it that makes it all work. It's earnest in a way a lot of modern games are almost afraid to be these days. You got a cast that's simple but very lovable. Their banter definitely had this mix of corny humor and genuine warmth that made everything feel like a group of friends you just wanted to hang out with. The combat system isn't necessarily revolutionary, but it definitely does its job. It's a traditional turn-based system with a little twist. Character positioning matters, since battles play out on a grid where range and movement can affect outcomes. It adds just enough spice to keep fights engaging without slowing things down. What really sticks with me is the atmosphere. The music is phenomenal, full of all these heartfelt themes that just elevate even the simplest moments. And the remaster's slightly updated visuals give the whole thing a fresh coat of paint without taking away what makes it special. The Lunar games are the definition of like cozy JRPGs. They're heartfelt, compact, and easy to finish in, let's say, a week or so. If you've never experienced them, the remasters are the perfect way to dive in. When people talk about perfectly paced JRPGs, they're almost always talking about something like Chrono Trigger. Released in 1995 on the SNES, this game set the gold standard for how to tell a sweeping and emotional story. Chrono Trigger delivered a complete adventure, multiple timelines, a colorful cast, and even multiple endings in a tidy 20 to 25 hours. The first thing that stands out is how little the game wastes your time. There's no filler dungeon that feels like it exists just to stall progression, no mandatory grind to pad the runtime. Every area introduced something new. Whether it's a clever mechanic, a memorable boss, or a story beat that raises the stakes, you're always moving forward and always engaged. The cast is another triumph. Chrono, the silent protagonist, might be a blank slate of sorts, but the supporting characters more than make up for it. Each party member has an arc that feels really satisfying without dragging on for hours, and because the game is short, their growth feels sharper, their moments are more impactful. Combat is amazing. The active time battle system keeps fights moving and still feels modern even today. Then there's the time travel. It's so easy for a mechanic like this to become confusing or convoluted, but Chrono Trigger keeps it clean. You hop between eras and every leap feels purposeful. actions in the past have ripples in the future, and the game makes those connections clear without overwhelming the player. The multiple endings are the cherry on top. You can finish the game in around 20 hours, but if you want to replay it, there's a wealth of alternative outcomes for you to discover. Chrono Trigger remains the definitive short JRPG in my opinion. It's focused, it's heartfelt, and endlessly replayable. Even today, almost 30 years later, it feels modern in its design, and it's a reminder that less really can be more. Dragon Quest III has always been a landmark title. Originally released in 1988, it was the game that solidified the series' reputation in Japan. It laid the groundwork for countless RPGs to follow it. Now, with the HD 2D remake, it finally has a definitive modern version, one that preserves its classic structure while giving it the gorgeous makeover it deserves. And like the best short JRPGs on this list, it's an adventure you can wrap up in 20 to 25 hours, let's say. Part of what makes Dragon Quest III work so well as a shorter experience is its simplicity. You start as a young hero with a pretty straightforward task, but along the way you discover a larger, more cosmic threat. It's a straightforward save-the-world narrative, but one that I really enjoyed. And because the game doesn't linger, every step of the journey feels pretty meaningful. The real star here, though, is all the classic JRPG systems. At the start, you can create your own party members and assign them jobs like warrior, mage, cleric, and so on. Later in the game, you can even change vocations, letting characters carry skills from one class into another. It's not as deep as modern job system, but it strikes a perfect balance of customization and accessibility. The HD 2D remake brings huge quality of life upgrades as well. Battles are faster, menus are cleaner, and the whole thing runs with the slickness you'd expect from the modern JRPGs you see today. The art style, HD 2D all the way. I love every HD 2D game out there, and this implementation of the HD 2D art style is by far my favorite. What I love about Dragon Quest III is that it feels like a complete JRPG journey, kind of in a miniature package. You start small in your hometown, then gradually explore into this wider, bigger world. For newcomers, this remake is one of the best entry points into Dragon Quest. It's approachable, fast-moving, and it doesn't require really a ton of prior knowledge of the series. For longtime fans, it's a chance to revisit a classic in its best possible form. Definitely check out this game before Dragon Quest I and II HD 2D remake release later this year. When Am Setsuna launched in 2016, it was meant to be a kind of mission statement for Square Enix's then new Tokyo RPG Factory studio, a return to the stripped-back elegance of the classic JRPGs. It openly wore its inspirations on its sleeve, especially Chrono Trigger, and for many players, that was enough reason to check it out. But what I think makes it stick and why it earns a spot on this list is how compact and focused it is. You can see the entire story through in about 15 to 20 hours, and along the way, it delivers a surprisingly great experience. The setup is deliberately familiar. You play as the protagonist, a mercenary hired to escort a girl named Setsuna on a pilgrimage. If that reminds you of Final Fantasy X, you're not wrong. It's very much riffing on that same archetype of the sacrificial journey, but instead of drawing things out across a humongous 60 to 70 hour campaign, Am Setsuna narrows the scope, focusing on kind of this dark tone of the journey itself. Snow-covered landscapes, quiet conversations, and the music all set the tone for where this game is heading. Combat definitely leans heavily on Chrono Trigger's active time battle system, right down to the combo mechanics where party members can team up for special attacks. It's not revolutionary, but it's brisk and satisfying, and most importantly, it doesn't bog you down in menus or grinding. Enemies hit hard enough to make you think, but battles are over quickly, which helps the pacing immensely. The soundtrack is one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. It is one of the game's most memorable features, and it's scored entirely on a solo piano. It creates this haunting, fragile atmosphere that perfectly matches this snowy setting and the dark tone of the story. Now, it's fair to acknowledge the criticism some players have for Am Setsuna. It can be too derivative, bound by nostalgia, or too one-note in its emotional register, but I think those qualities are exactly what make it work as a shorter JRPG. It doesn't try to do everything. It focuses on a single tone, a single journey, and it sees it through to the end without overstaying its welcome. Ys Memoire, the Oath and Felghana, was a great surprise for me that I played for the first time this year. Falcom's Ys series is one of the longest running JRPG franchises out there, and it's always stood apart because of its speed. Where most JRPGs ask you to settle in for these long, drawn-out experiences, Ys games are about immediacy, fast-paced action, pulse-pounding music, and adventures you can finish in much less time. The Oath and Felghana is often considered one of the series' best, and with the recent Ys Memoire remaster, it's easier than ever to play. Even better, you can wrap it up in maybe 15 or so hours, which makes it one of the shortest and most replayable games on this list. The story is simple but effective. I mean, it's not going to win any huge awards for narrative complexity, but it doesn't need to. The charm lies in how quickly it moves. There's no filler, no lengthy exposition dumps, and it's just action, dungeons, bosses, and enough story to give it all context. Combat is definitely where this one shines. It's real-time hack and slash gameplay, but with a surprising amount of depth. You've got aerial combos, charge attacks, magic spells, and you can weave it all into your strategy. The flow is fast and fluid and super, super addictive. And those bosses, they're definitely the highlight. Massive encounters that demand pattern recognition, reflexes, and really, really high skill. They can be brutally difficult, but the satisfaction of finally taking one down is exhilarating. The new Ys Memoire version adds several enhancements, including updated visuals, voice acting, and a remastered soundtrack, and that soundtrack definitely deserves its own spotlight. Falcom's music team has always been legendary, and Felghana's score is no exception. What makes Felghana perfect for this list is just how contained it feels. You can start it on a Friday evening, play a few hours each night, and probably by early next week, you'll have rolled credits. If you're looking for a shorter JRPG that is just a ton of fun and pure joy, Ys Memoire, The Oath and Felghana, you can't go wrong with this one. Anyway, that's it for my list of 10 JRPGs that can be short, sweet, and still incredibly memorable. What strikes me the most about these titles is their focus. Long JRPGs can be wonderful, and I love those too, but shorter ones tend to cut away all the excess stuff. They give you everything you want, compelling characters, engaging combat, great storytelling, without demanding you put your entire backlog on hold for months at a time. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure you subscribe. It really helps out the channel, and let me know in the comments below what you think of the games on this list. Are there any short JRPGs that you would recommend? I look forward to reading all your thoughts, and until next time, I'm out.
さすがね、弓矢。おい、クイックドロー。わかった。